Good afternoon. First of all, let me say thank you. We've gotten great coverage for this event, and we appreciate your presence here this afternoon. We started to talk about this event some 11 months ago, and there were three questions that we pondered. The first was, why should we observe this 40th? The second was, if we did, what should be the focus? And then the third was, who and how would the event be planned? As for the why, in discussing this event, we talked about the fact that this would be a great opportunity for us to focus on the successful enrollment of the students rather than the images of the Schoolhouse Door stand and all of the ideals that that represented. Secondly, we felt because of the timeliness of this event and the age of some of the participants that this might be the last time we could assemble the students, the administrators, the community leaders that were active in making this societal change happen. The what will we do with an event like this? Well, we looked at the accomplishments of these people, and we thought, how could we make this relevant to the current administrators, the current students who are here, and the current community leaders, in a sense where we could use what they did as a blueprint to addressing some of the concerns that we have as a society today. We also wanted to make it relevant to school-age children, not just from a historical standpoint, but for them to think about the importance of the principle that was at stake June 11, 1963, and that is the American principle of equality of opportunity for all. And so the who and the how, we wanted to find some university people, some community people, and some of our pioneers to help us plan this event. Dr. Blackburn attended every meeting. Burt Jones was an advisory member. My good friend Autherine Lucy, James and Vivian Malone Jones attended several of the meetings. And this is what we came up with. We're pleased with the publicity we've gotten so far. We're looking forward to the anniversary date tomorrow and all the celebration that will go with that. But if we could sum up in one sentence or phrase what we were trying to do with this, we wanted to say thank you to all who had played a part in making the desegregation possible. And we wanted to let them know that we welcome the opportunity if they would come back here to try to learn from them so that we could take what they've done as a blueprint to address some of the concerns that we have as a society today and help hopefully make this world a better place. And on that note, I would like to introduce our president, Dr. Robert Witt.
Thank you very much, Samori. 40 years ago, events transpired on our campus that transformed the university and captured the attention of a nation. The Opening Doors program that we're conducting here on campus over these 2 days give us an opportunity to remember the courage and the values of the men and women who helped transform our campus. It also provides an opportunity to reflect on our progress, but perhaps most importantly, to reflect on the work yet to be done. I think it's important to recognize that the choice of words in naming this program, Opening Doors, keeps it very much in the present as opposed to the past, because we really are dealing with a work in progress. It's now my pleasure to introduce my fellow panelists. Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., an attorney and environmentalist whose father played a pivotal role 40 years ago on our campus. Autherine Lucy Foster, the first African American to enroll at the university in 1956. Mr. James Hood, one of 2 African American students who enrolled at the university in 1963, along with Vivian Malone Jones, who will be with us shortly. Dr. Hood earned his PhD from the University of Alabama in 1997. And we, I believe, now are ready to take your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Witt, could you address what in your opinion, what race relations are at the university right now, and what are the areas that you feel need to be specifically addressed to make things better?
I believe the current state of race relations on campus is very positive, and I think that positive state has been driven by the meaningful progress that's been made in recent years. The university's enrollment on the undergraduate level is currently 14% African American, 13% overall, taking into account graduate students. The university leads the country in one of the most important programs designed to graduate more African American faculty members. So we've been able to establish, in terms of diversity trends, significant progress. One of the things that pleased me the most when I arrived here a little over 3 months ago was the sense that on our campus there is a very welcoming, warm, nurturing environment. And I think that, perhaps more than anything else, has produced a significant improvement in race relations. In terms of where we go from here, from my personal perspective, we have opened doors and we have created the possibility for people to go to school. I think the next step that we must take as a university is to focus more on the probability of individuals going to school and to systematically strip out of the system any barriers that remain to individuals being able to achieve their full potential.
My question is for Mr. Kennedy. When you think about the reason why you're here, what really compelled you to feel that it was necessary that you attend these events?
Well, my father played a pivotal role in this battle, and it's an era that I remember well. In fact, my father, during the time that he was engaged in this struggle, used to write letters to us children almost every day, talking about the details of the struggle, talking about why it was happening, and talking about his aspirations that when we grew older, that this battle would be behind America. The people who participated and who actually ended up walking, the pioneers here who walked through the Schoolhouse Door, were really the last soldiers of the American Revolution, because this was the issue. Race relations in our country was the issue that the founding fathers could not solve, and they deferred it. And they deferred it to Abraham Lincoln, and he came along and tried to solve it, and he died the last day of that war, leaving it half done but still unsolved. And our country became a true constitutional democracy for the first time in its history when the Voting Rights Act was passed. And that happened because of the conflict that happened right here at the University of Alabama. And so our country really was not what it was supposed to be from the beginning, which is a true constitutional democracy. And that battle happened, the final battle of the American Revolution happened right here in Alabama, and the focal point, the critical focal point, was the University of Alabama.
Mr. Kennedy, I was just hoping you could share with me what you hope, your plans for your message tonight, what you hope to bring through.
Well, I think it's important for, particularly today when we have so much apathy in our country, and we have our voting rolls plummeting to 50% of the eligible voting population, that people remember, that Americans, particularly young people, remember that other people suffered and underwent all kinds of agony and sacrifice in order to establish the rights, basic rights that many people today take for granted, like the right to attend a university. I mean, these people were true heroes, and they, in their lifetimes, those struggles were still in front of the country, and without them, they wouldn't have happened. So I think it's important for all Americans to understand democracy is fragile. Right now, there's a national debate about our democratic institutions and about how we should react to terrorism abroad, and whether we want to start compromising our rights at home in order to deal with a foreign enemy. And I think that it's really important for us to understand how difficult and how many sacrifices were made to establish those rights. And that as a nation, no matter how strong a foreign enemy is, we shouldn't begin to compromise them.
How old were you when this was taking place, if you don't mind?
Well, I was born in 1954.
Kennedy, do you have any
Yes.
memories of the documentary that Robert Drew made, and you have any reaction?
I have memories of the time, and I've seen the documentary since then. But we had meetings in our home at that time relating, and my father's children were all very much aware of what was going on. We kept up with current events. We were compelled by our parents to read the newspapers every day. We watched the news together, and a lot of this stuff was happening at our home in Hickory Hill. In fact, I believe in that documentary, many of the telephone calls are made from the living room of our house or my father's office, and we were always around when this was happening. And he made a special effort to keep us appraised, to talk about these issues at the dinner table, and to talk about. And I remember when James Meredith went to school in Mississippi. I have a letter today from my father to my little brother David, in which he said, today we helped James Meredith get into the University of Mississippi. I hope that you won't have to, that this will be behind our country, that these kind of struggles by the time that you're grown up, and if they aren't, that you will be fighting for justice in this country. So we were constantly reminded of the fact that this was an historic struggle, and my father, I think, felt very fortunate to be able to participate in something that was so obviously the right thing for our country and for our role in history.
Is this the first time that Mr. Kennedy you have been in the presence of Dr. Hood, Ms. Jones, and Ms. Foster?
No. We've met before on many occasions, but I lived in Alabama for a year, and I wrote a book on the civil rights movement in Alabama, and I wrote a biography of Judge Frank Johnson back in 1976, and so I've spent a lot of time in the state. I've been to this university many times in the past, and I also I ran Senator Kennedy's campaign in Alabama in 1980. So I've been to every county in Alabama, almost every town in Alabama. I love the state, and it's a treat for me to be back here, and these are old friends, and our paths have crossed many times at many different events over the past.
Questions for any of our panelists?
This is for Dr. Hood and Ms. Jones. I'm just interested to know how you feel about the comments that were made by the governor's former press secretary, that the two of you had been used twice by the governor. And Dr. Hood, I know you had become friends with the governor in the years prior to his death. What are your thoughts about that?
I heard that today, and I was somewhat bewildered with the comment. But coming from the person that it came from, I became concerned, because that's the first time I've heard that description of Vivian and my role in terms of the governor's perception. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that we weren't the only persons used by George Wallace. The people of the state of Alabama was used by George Wallace as well. And so in a sense, I feel at least vindicated that I wasn't the sole victim, along with Vivian, that we had help and others that were a party to George Wallace's antics. On the other side of that, I think it was clearly an indication of the type of opportunistic politician George Wallace was. And I've said this many times. He would use whatever he needed to use, whatever means, whatever strategy, that would get him the most matters. And I think that was us, along with everything else that George Wallace did. But when you look at the bottom line of George Wallace, you have to realize he did a lot more positive things for American civil rights than any other American in the history of this country. We got the 1964 Civil Rights Act as a result of George Wallace's antics on this campus. It never would have happened had he not chosen that strategy. So in a sense, being used was one positive thing that I see the outcome being, you know, the Civil Rights Act.
It was a little bit of a surprise to hear that come from him, but I've always felt that even though I know a number of people have said over the years that, you know, it was a political thing on the part of George Wallace and all of this, but my feelings, and I've said this many, many times before, that whether he felt this sincerely in his heart, that segregation was right for Alabama and for me and for James and for the rest of the African Americans in the state, whether or not he took it as a political stand, it really didn't matter to me. What mattered to me most, that it was wrong. It was an evil act on his part. So even though I was able to forgive him, I still knew that it was not right. It just wasn't a thing for a governor, the head of a state, to declare, regardless of what form that he pronounced it in, whether it was states' rights, it didn't matter to me. I had a right to be here at this university. I did everything that could possibly have been done. I learned that I had scored about as high than 99% of the other people who had applied. It was just all these things that had happened, and I still couldn't get into this university. So regardless of what his motives were, it was wrong. And that's the way I always have looked at it. I continue to look at it this day. While I'm able to forgive, I still know that it was an act that should not have occurred in the state of Alabama and anywhere in this nation.
Ms. Foster, can you describe your experience in the 60s when you enrolled at the University of Alabama?
50.
Describe my experiences?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have that much time?
The shortened version, please.
My version. I was sitting here listening because of the fact, if I had to put a spin on the opening of the doors of the University of Alabama, it would be in 1956, and this would be the reopening, not because of Autherine, but because of the fact that I feel that that's when the doors open, because the stand that Governor Wallace took was just a stand. He knew that it was not going to keep the doors from opening when he took that stand. And I feel that my entrance into this university 47 years ago was the time that the doors opened. If anything, in '63, it was the reopening of the doors of the university. Now that may be just Authorine's take, but that's the way that I see it. And as far as my experience here, it was horrid to think that a young woman alone would have to run throughout the halls of a university that represents learning and justice. And a lot of times I shudder to think about it. But I'm so grateful that I've been given a spirit of forgiveness, and I've learned understanding. I've learned to accept rejection because of the fact that's what we face sometimes in this generation of ours. And of course, I tell it all the time. I don't sit up here and tell you that I feel good about it. But I've forgiven it too, as Ms. Malone has stated. You have to forgive. You don't forget what you forgive. I've forgiven it, and I love each and every one in this room. And it doesn't matter what you say about anything, how you view it. I still love you. We each have our right to our opinions, and whatever that is, we hold to it. And it's one thing about it, what spin we want to put on history, that's what we'll do for it. But Autherine states that it was opened in 1956.
Kennedy, one of the civil rights pioneers being honored is Morris Dees. Can you comment on your friendship with Mr. Dees and his contributions to civil rights?
Morris is a great friend, and he's a genuine hero. He's risked his life fighting against the forces of hatred. He represents, I think, the best of the South, which is a love for justice and an absolute fearless determination to make sure that there's access to justice in this country for all people. And that's what his whole life is about. He's devoted his life to that. I don't think anybody has ever questioned his courage or his motives or anything else. He has absolutely a pure life, and it's been devoted to one thing, which is giving access to justice to all the people.
Other questions? This question is for Ms. Foster, Dr. Ms. Jones. Do you consider the race relations at the school now to be at the point where you'd like to see them, or you'd like to see change?
May I answer first, so I won't have to repeat someone else? I hope you'll forgive me for being frank. I think we have made great strides. And I like to take a quote from Dr. Schuler, that every inch we make is a cinch, you know, because we're working toward that. I truly believe that the university is working hard to do that. But I do feel that there is a lot to be desired in race relations. And I came here not too long ago, and I said to some of the people in the reception where we were, some of the things that I thought needed to be done, especially in regards to the fraternities. It doesn't bother me, you know, but I think that if one would like to be a member of a fraternity, that he should, and he shouldn't be kept out. And it was funny. The young man came to me later on, I don't know what his name was. He said, when you said that, you expected us to say amen, didn't you? I said, no. And he said, I'm going over here now where they will have to say amen, a witness to the truth. I said, well, let me go with you, because you didn't say amen for me, but I'll say it for you. So to make a story short, I do think that there's a lot to be desired. I would like to see us have more minority professors, minority, my goodness, when you get near 82, you start, I'd like to see us have more minority professors. I would like to see, perhaps, let's give a person a try at the football courts when we can. I know we make the best choice that we do under circumstances, but that's what I'd like to see. And I'm going to end it there so Mr. Hood will have something to say.
Obviously, not enough has been done on this campus, and I venture to say probably not any other campus in the United States. And I think until we can really feel, as this is African Americans, that you really, when you go up and you are competing, that you can truly feel that you will not be denied that simply because of your race. And I don't think we have gotten there yet. I remember, I worked in affirmative action for a number of years, and I remember very specifically a selection being made. And I went to my boss, who was a pretty fair person under most circumstances. And there were two people. Now, there was an African-American candidate, and there was a white candidate. And he selected the white candidate. And I said, why? Because in this case, actually the black candidate, you know, we're talking about head and shoulders. He was actually head and shoulders. He says, I could have gone either way. But when he could go either way, he chose someone that looked like him. And he was not an evil or bad person. But in his mind, that was the choice that he should have made. And it was for a supervisory position. And we were not at that point ready to just say, you know, it's okay to hire, you know, as many supervisors as may be qualified for that job. So there is a lot more, and I agree with Autherine on this, that in terms of tenured professorships, in terms of administrative positions, and all of those things, you know, there's obviously more that can be done. I'm very pleased to serve on the President's cabinet, and I did receive information to go out and recruit. Because now I've become a little even more aware of what I need to do. You know, so there are things that I can do to go out and recruit more minorities here into this university, because every time I go to a high school and to a commencement and they say, where are you going? And they got all these schools and Alabama has one or two. And that bothered me, because I think it is a great institution, and I think we do need to do our part to make sure that we reach back and bring people on, that we watch what's going on, and that we talk about it, and I know our new president here will be willing to listen. And so it's all of our parts, I think, to try to make this university the best that it can be.
I think I would have to echo both what Vivian and what Autherine said, but I think personally, the University of Alabama has done a great deal to promote the social and cultural climate in higher education. The question is, how many people know that? It's the best kept secret in Alabama. And that's a mistake. 40 years later, how many people know about the first that this institution has had, other than this week? Many people didn't know. And my question is, why? There's a university relations office. Isn't that what it's supposed to be doing, selling the university story? It isn't doing it. The only thing I read about the university is in Higher Education Chronicle about some female who wanted to get into a sorority and the conflict that created. The next thing I read is that there's an opportunity to hire a black coach, and we choose not to do that. And the question is, have we arrived at the point where we can say that content of one's character is the significant factor in decision making, or is it still the color of the skin? Take a walk across this campus to the student union, and you will see the answer to that question. There are tables of Italian kids, there are tables of Hispanic kids, there are tables of black kids, there are tables of Asian Americans. Why? That's what we fought for to get here. And why do we have it? Because the students feel comfortable. No disrespect for Dr. Witt, but I looked at your webpage. Nowhere in the mission of the University of Alabama today, as of this morning, is there a statement on the question of diversity. Why not? Why not? 40 years later, why doesn't this university have a position on diversity? Administratively, a position. Other institutions have it. There's no person on this campus responsible for minority recruitment and retention. There are a lot of people responsible in part, but no single individual. Why not? Other institutions have it. Wouldn't it be nice if we could say that we know an institution that mirrors what America's dream is all about. And that institution is the University of Alabama.
May I add one thing? In spite of it all, I love the University of Alabama. I love its officials. I love the state of Alabama. I let no one tell me that the University of Alabama is not a great and a good school. What I say is because I feel a part of Alabama. I wish I could do more, but I'm going to leave it to these young people. Maybe I'll throw out the understanding and the suggestion, and those who are younger and who have the spirit and the courage and the get up and go, you'll get the job done. But I love the University of Alabama, don't get me wrong, and I love each person that's connected with it as far as that is possible.